and want each of you to take us back to March 13th and the days that followed. What was the experience like for you transitioning from school to remote learning? And I'm going to start with our student, with Andres.
Well, the day they announced that we were going into pandemic or whatever it is at the time, I was really confused. It felt like my world kind of froze, but like the words kind of wait because I didn't really know how serious it was until like that day, and it really just shocked me how like everything kind of just stopped. And in hindsight, it may seem cool, like no school, but when you're trying to like reach your goals and stuff, you kind of need that to get there. You do need that to get there. And I just felt like things were just gonna get harder. And sometimes I assumed the worst. And with everybody getting sick, it was hard not to do that. So that's what I remember from that day.
Great, great. And what about the days that followed that day? So what was it like immediately after kind of transitioning?
Well, yeah, school like started pretty. It was kind of confusing because people had to get like Chromebooks and struggled with getting on and stuff. But it didn't take that long for me to like get accustomed to waking up and doing school online. But then it just got more frustrating because I just felt like I wasn't learning anything, like especially in mathematics. Like that's one of the classes I always do good in other classes, but mathematics is one of the classes that I've always struggled to pass in. So I always learned with one-on-one activity, like someone being there with me, but it's weird seeing it on the screen for me. And I just felt like I wasn't learning. I felt like I wasn't taking it too serious. And yeah, that's really it. That's what I remember after. But they didn't like give too much work, but it was just hard to adjust to. And there were just so many things going on. It's like school too. So.
Yeah, well, we'll get to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm going to ask Sunea to share a little bit about what that was like for you as a parent.
When it first happened, it was just like it felt like my whole world crashed down on me. Being that I have 5 children that all attend the Boston Public Schools, and I'm like, well, what's going to happen? So they started saying that they was going to send out the computers and we were going to have to pick up the work. And when I got to the schools, a lot of the schools didn't have the proper work that attended to the child at hand. So I had to go back home and get back in touch with the school, and they emailed me their packets and what they needed for the outing that they was the pandemic that we had. Now, amongst getting with the teachers, at first, everyone, it was a learning experience for everyone. The teachers had to learn, the parents had to learn. This is something new to all of us. So when we first got on there, it was kind of hard, a couple of days, probably a week. But then after that, it got real easy going. I knew that I would have to get up at 4 and set up the stations and stuff for the children so that they can go along with their classes and stuff like that. But it was extremely hard in the beginning.
Anna, we talk a little bit from a teacher perspective.
Yeah, aside from being my birthday, that day was memorable from the teacher perspective. I didn't know what to send kids home with. We weren't really sure what the messaging was. Like Sunea said, we mixed, or a lot of teachers experimented with packets or technology, a mix of both. And during the first 2 weeks, every grade level experimented with a different model, and it felt very spontaneous. Almost every day was something new or different. A different surprise, because of a lot of my students had non-academic needs. Aside from the academic needs, they also had non-academic ones, like worrying about food and technology, internet services. Some of our students were in shelters, so we had a lot of needs. And the best thing that helped us was asking our families and parents for daily advice and suggestions. So they told us what they were overwhelmed with, what was not working, because we started with handing students the work and waiting for them to sort of pop in our office hours and ask us questions, and that wasn't working. Students weren't able to complete the tasks, and I wasn't able to help everyone. So then we moved to teaching everyone at once, and that was okay. But if a student missed a lesson or missed a day, then it was hard to catch them up. And then that's when we moved to more of a project-based learning model.
Great. Well, we're going to hear a little bit more about that in a moment, and want to hear a bit more from Andres, because I think it will flow into what you did, Anna, about what you talked about, Andres, about the content online. It's English or math, which you talked about being a challenge, and it's definitely different for all students, remote versus in a classroom. Can you talk about a couple of your experiences related to?
I've had definitely ones where teachers have helped me. Like, struggling with math came along the way, but in terms of, like, since I'm going in my senior year, I was also worrying about like my credits and, you know, everything that you need to pass. So teachers did a good job of like scheduling a meeting. Like, me and my mom were like talking one day, and then we decided, it was like probably 4 or 5 o'clock, we decided to email, and I got a meeting the next day, and he told me my GPA and everything else I needed. So that helped. But in terms of like the class and the learning, it was just kind of hard, especially when kids would only be like 2 people showing up, or like, you know, it takes mad long to start and you only have like 15 minutes of class because it took like half an hour for everybody to get on and like paying attention or learn, like caught up. So those were the only struggles I had, but there were some good parts too.
Sounds like one of the good parts was around flexibility.
Yeah, flexibility for sure.
Anna, do you want to? Oh, Andres, did you want to share something else? Sorry.
Oh no, I was just saying they delivered.
Anna, do you want to talk a little bit? I think that the struggles of that not having one-on-one support that Andres talked about, and when flexibility was helpful. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the project-based learning approach that you mentioned, that you and your fellow 5th grade teacher engaged in, I think with some of your other colleagues from the Mendel, and talk about what that looked like and maybe how project-based learning addressed some of the challenges that Andre pointed to?
Sure. So our students needed a lot of flexibility with like time to complete tasks, or just even with the tasks themselves, and they needed choice. So our worksheets and our math workbook was not working through digital learning or remote learning. So that's when we sort of thought of a project or project-based learning approach. So we hadn't done much professional development on it, but we did have some examples to work off of. And so we just decided to make our multiplying and dividing decimal unit come alive with thinking of a food truck model and what does it take to run a food truck business. So our students got to work with decimals and estimate with decimals and really get into something exciting that was still math related and made it sort of real for them. Students got to choose our questions and our guiding questions that sort of helped our project grow. A lot of them were wondering, how does a chef go about monetizing a signature dish or monetizing an item? So we used some BuzzFeed Tasty videos and use those recipes and monetize them. We talked about what their goals are for selling in a community, as well as things about having a loan for owning a food truck versus raising money for a food stall, which is cheaper. So our students got really excited to make this grow, and students who moved at a faster pace could work on more multimedia approaches, like making a website or working on their advertisement logo. And it was just really exciting for parents to see their children see math around them and be excited about it.
And could you just talk for a minute about the flexibility piece? So we know Andres talked about that.
Yeah,
how would it enable that flexibility for you?
Yes, sorry. If a student missed a day with our project, we found, for instance, that they were easily able to come back into our conversations the next day because we could all talk about someone else's work. Or we can all comment on a video that we saw that we then monetized. Something that we're considering next year for flexibility as well is pre-recording lessons. I had a slideshow with like audio of, if you chose this answer, listen to this explanation. But pre-recorded lessons would also give that students that flexibility of, if you can't be there in the moment, not missing that opportunity to learn in the best way possible.